I was born to a blended family. My sisters and my brothers have different fathers and mothers. I grew up in Kilimani until the age of 11. My father was British. He was here as the executive director, or the regional director of Oxford University Press. So he was a publisher. And British, only child, and had never traveled to Africa before. He met my mother, who was then working for VOK, and she was a newsreader and a beautician. And they got married, and they were part of this post-independence middle class, emerging middle class.
Right.
But among them were some really profound people. So I remember, people like Ama Ata Aidu, the Ghanaian writer who lived in Kenya briefly, Jonathan Kariara, the gay poet and literature, critic. People like Feroz and Vilu Novoroji, a lawyer and child rights protection specialist. So this was the community that my parents grew up in. So these were people who were decent. They were they carried themselves around values and virtues, and that's what I remember from the Kenyan part of it. At the age of 11, we moved to the UK, and I then went from being Kenyan mixed race, or what we sometimes still call 0.5, to a black child who neither fitted among Caribbean children or other African children, or the Black British as they were called. So I had real questions about identity, and I'm always grateful to my father who introduced me at a very young age. I think at the age of 14 I was reading Martin Luther King, Soledad Brother by George Jackson, Malcolm X. I was listening to Nina Simone music, and he always said to me that was part of his responsibility as a father, was to help me make sense of my racial identity in a world that was primarily racist. And that helped me kind of anchor myself. So those are some of the experiences as a young teenager, I guess. I don't think you can conclusively resolve anything to do with identities. Identities continue to evolve and continue to expand, particularly for those who are making strategic choices about how they want to live and what they want to be known for, what legacy they want to leave behind. So identity is a constant evolution for me. So there are moments in my life when I considered myself, very Kenyan, other moments very African. And there are moments where that's not really been that important to me. And my description of who I am relates more to what I'm about, what it is that I'm trying to create out there in the world, rather than my identity as a mixed race, middle class, professional, grandfather, father of 7 kids, all that stuff. I dropped that one for you. So for me, the thing is, we spend a lot of time, I think, soul searching. And for me, I continue to search my soul. But I think what's more important for me is finding my relevance, not in terms of my identity, but really about, what is it that I'm offering, the country, what is it that I'm offering the continent. That's what's more interesting for me, who am I being in the face of injustice, a lack of dignity for millions of people, a country in which many people don't have a voice, they are not visible, they're not able to take action on things that matter to them. That's for me much more important than, as I say, this identity that is middle class, middle-aged, although I think I'm slightly beyond middle-aged now as well, and father, grandfather, and so on. But obviously all those things are important. The two are together. So I don't fight anyone out of anything than a love for justice, a love for freedom, a love for dignity, and a love for, I guess, cohesion. Right? Somebody once asked me, "Do you describe yourself as an enemy of the state?" And I said, "No, I'm not an enemy of the state. I actually believe in a just state. I believe in a state that is responsible for its citizens, that uses its taxes efficiently, and first and foremost protects its citizens against those who try to hurt them." You'd find humor, You would find a commitment, but not an attachment to things. You would find you would find. I think you would find a sense of self-depreciation. Yes. That I don't. I keep my ego in check. It grows, and it's like a bit like a concertina. It'll expand, and I have to shrink it again. And I do have it that my soul is infinitely more important to me than my ego. It's more important to be doing things that matter than to be seen to be doing things that matter. Or I laugh at myself.
Yes.
I tease myself. I don't hold disappointments. I time my disappointments. Impatience.
Okay.
And a desire to run faster than the people around me.
Sorry.
What are the things I battle with? So impatience is one. This would be a question for my wife. Impatience, and I struggle also with listening. Listening in terms of what matters to people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very good at hearing people, but occasionally I'm trying to drum a point, or I'm trying to make a point, and don't listen for what's important to people, which sometimes actually is not even what I'm speaking to. So I'm a feminist. I like to declare I'm a feminist and have people treat me that way, which means that for me, power and privilege in my home is not something that I uphold. So in my home, we don't have daddy's chair, right? And we don't have the kitchen as out of bounds for me. I know what's in my fridge.
Yes.
I don't cook as much as I could, but I don't have it that that is the role of my wife. I also give license to my children to be critical. One of my proudest moments as a father was my son challenging me on the basis of my integrity. And a great moment with my son, I think he was 15 at the time, said, Dad, that has no integrity.
Yes.
That has no integrity.
Yes.
And I had to ask him for a moment just to sit back and reflect on a 15-year-old boy telling his father that it has no integrity, and also that he was telling the truth, that I was saying something that actually was not true and was definitely not backed by my behavior. The youngest kid is, and I say kids, but then, so the youngest is 17, the eldest is 32.
32?
Yeah, I have 7 children. 7 children. It's a blended family, so I have several children who are adopted, and some that are biological. But I don't do stepchildren. I don't do stepchildren, and I don't do biological and adopted. I just do children. So in 2010, I was attacked with my eldest son in a vehicle coming from Namanga, coming back to Nairobi about 9 o'clock at night. And the vehicle was brought to a stop by a group of thugs, 5 in number, who basically punctured our tires and then proceeded to beat us very thoroughly with rungus and machetes, pangas. And in that incident, my son, who had already lost one eye from a violent attack it's about 18 months before that, was attacked again in this instant, which I was with him. And he lost his second eye in this incident. I was left with more stitches than a pair of Levi jeans, is the way I describe it. But both of us were left bleeding from our head and back. And the 5 thugs basically got away with one BlackBerry, 5,000 shillings, one camera, one leather jacket. But for my son, he was permanently damaged in the sense that he could no longer see. He became blind at the age of 20. I think he was 28 at the time. And that moment when I realized that this was going to be his future was probably the most scariest moment of my life.